Welcome to TechConnect. On this episode, we're going to talk about real-time connectivity in software and how it's transforming emergency response. We're going to learn how recent technologies like AI, wearables, and telehealth are helping to reshape the future of EMS. I'm very excited today to have a very special guest. David Peck is the Chief Operating Officer and Director at Star Ambulance. David, welcome to TechConnect.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get into the detailed questions, can you tell me a little bit about Star Ambulance and your approach with technology?
Sure. Star Ambulance is a central Indiana private ambulance service. We've been around since 1982, so 40 going on 44 years here pretty soon. We transport patients in emergency and non-emergency capacities. We transport nearly around 25,000 people annually. We use technology in every aspect of our jobs, from literally the moment we come into work and begin checking our ambulances to all of our patient interactions to our business revenue cycles of processing claims.
Wow. There's a lot that you must have to deal with in terms of technology. You obviously manage a big fleet. You've got patients and patient data and information you need to communicate with hospitals in both emergency and non-emergency situations. I also imagine a bunch of medical devices as well that need tech support on your trucks. How do you go about dealing with all those different layers of technology and making sure that they run effectively?
Well, a lot of people, ranging from our IT company that helps us from get things set up, and of course, ongoing maintenance of issues of devices that are used 24/7, 365, to biomed engineers, to making sure that all of our equipment is calibrated and fine tuned and ready for actual patient hands on use there. Lots of user interfaces of managing, seeing where our ambulances are at any given point in time, who's going to become available, when can we take our next transport, where are they going, all that stuff.
Oh, that's great. I'm sure technology in your business, I'm sure it's been crazy couple of years as it's sort of transforming all industries. And I know a lot in the EMS space. Maybe to start, could you talk a little bit about the tools that your team and yourself are using and deploying to the front line with EMS workers?
Sure. There's not at this point. There's not an aspect of our day, I don't think, that involves technology. I mean, I'm old enough that when I started in EMS, it was still pretty analog. I mean, we still did things on paper. We did charting on paper. We did truck check sheets on paper, and that kind of stuff. And now there's everything's been digitized. So we use Panasonic G2 Tough Books to start our day. We're doing our ambulance operations checks. So obviously, there's a whole list of equipment and supplies that each ambulance has to have on it each day. We utilize our tough books as we're going through, checking those off, doing the check sheets. Every single time we interact with a patient has to be documented. All of our charting, and it has to be done mobily. So we're doing that on the road from all over the state of Indiana, and it's all being transmitted back to our headquarters, and all that data. The ambulances have data tracking tools in them, but rather just GPS, dash cameras. Even engine information. If a check engine light comes on in our ambulance, our maintenance staff is notified of it. So and then you can get to the actual patient, care aspect of uh, big technologies like, automatic CPR devices. Specifically, what we use is a Stryker Lucas device that it does chest compressions. Obviously video laryngoscopes and cardiac monitors capable of transmitting information to emergency rooms anywhere in the state with an internet connection. Pictures from scenes if need be. So we have technology in every aspect of our jobs at this point.
Yeah, and you mentioned like a lot of different areas where technology plays a role, and kind of breaking those down. You've got fleet management because you're managing, you're managing vehicles. You've
Mhm.
got patient diagnostics and imaging, and how is the patient doing in transmitting that data. And then you also have all sorts of other kind of mobility things that you got to take care of as well. So there's also there's a lot of different applications I suspect behind the scenes on how tech and EMS interrelate. From your experience, are you seeing improvements in efficiency, improvements in response time, and maybe break down a little bit of sort of like the non-emergency versus emergency types of technologies?
Yeah, well, for sure, when it comes to efficiency in terms of business related stuff, claims processing, insurance processing, all of that is immeasurably faster than the way it used to be. I mean, we used to have physical pieces of paper. Well, maybe that ambulance completed a transport in Lafayette, Indiana, or Indianapolis, Indiana, and that's where the physical piece of paper used to be. And then before we could even start with the processing, it would have to be collected from there and brought to our headquarters. And go on. Now it's just clicks a button. It doesn't matter, where they're at. That charting can be sent to us immediately. So that makes revenue turnaround time so very much faster. Um, Response times, yeah, especially when you're managing 22 ambulances like we do, and then of course there are services or even municipalities who manage considerably even more ambulances than that. Well, uh, that's a lot of uh, time management and best guess estimations of how long it's going to take to do certain things. So throughout a day, our service receives calls, around the clock requesting transportation from point A to point B.
Mhm.
So rarely are we taking a call for somebody who's not currently doing anything. It's stuff that has to be scheduled out. So we may be scheduling 6, 7, 10, 12 hours in advance, and you're trying to manage to have the ambulances that are closest to the wherever they're needed, and being able to serve the most customers efficiently. I mean, we try to not have ambulances crisscrossing each other, not going to their more, closest appropriate things. And that's for on the non-emergency side for all that pre-scheduled stuff or things that, get called in from facilities. When it comes to, 911 responses, um, especially in the very busy areas. I'll just take, I don't work there, but Indianapolis EMS is the largest ambulance provider, in the state of Indiana. Not surprising, obviously, Indianapolis is the capital and the largest city. And they're doing over 400 911 requests a day. And with however many ambulances that they have, that's a lot of, if you imagine, radio traffic. So they don't want to have all that. You'd just be having ambulances trying to talk over the other ones, and a dispatch center being flooded with stuff. So I know, places like there, trying to improve efficiency and communications, they install these mobile data terminals in their ambulances. So when a call comes out, the information comes in over that terminal, and they don't even radio in that they're responding. They have a touch screen, and they mark that it's acknowledged and they're en route. So they can have 55 ambulances all doing stuff at the same time, but not trying to talk over each other on one radio channel. I know that's a big thing technology's played in that used to not, when I first started in this career and in this industry, that was not a thing, and now
Yeah.
it is very much so.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I mean, and a question for you on like, how do you maintain all of this? Because you're always on, right? You're
Yeah.
always servicing emergency response calls or non-emergency, scheduled visits and all of that work that you do. How do you maintain the technology and make sure it's running without downtime to your fleet?
Well, a number of ways. Well, first and foremost, right out of the gate, downtimes occasionally do happen. You may be without a one piece of technology for one reason or another, whether it's something's wrong with it, it needs updated, it's being swapped out, something. So that's why you almost always have to have a redundancy for almost every piece of technology that we have, you have to have a backup because exactly we never close. We've not closed in 43 years for a single minute. So
Mhm.
you have to have a plan for when something happens like that. But by and large, it mostly is taken care of without issues. And we have a IT company who, of course, anytime we get a new tough book from Panasonic, or a piece of equipment from them, they integrate it, make sure all the passwords are installed and all the settings are the way we've wanted. We've had Panasonic tough books now for 3 or 4 years. So when we first got them, there was some, obviously playing around with how we want the settings set up. So now it's a lot faster to where we know what we want. It just comes in, they set it up with the settings, and then we can deploy it.
Mhm.
That's for that kind of stuff. And then for the diagnostic stuff, you have to rely on biomed engineers for ventilators and cardiac monitors and things like that. So you have to usually the manufacturer has whether it be Zoll or Physio Control or any of those medical technology companies. They come out and they maintain. They have to have regular routine maintenance schedules as well as, of course, spot fixing things. Um, and you have to have some technological prowess just at the top. I'm not going to pretend that of all of our management, I'm the most technologically literate. I think I can do enough to get by, but our assistant director actually is pretty good at that kind of stuff. So his name's Dustin, and we're real quick to just yell out, "Hey, Dustin!" if something goes wrong, and he starts fixing it for us. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone that needs a resource like a Dustin.
Yes, yeah. I mean, no,
Yeah.
it's you have to have someone like that, and
Yeah.
time stops for no one. So I was at one point in time, I was probably very technology savvy, but technology moves on, and you get older, and you just need you need more people to help you keep up on it.
Yeah, which is a good transition to my kind of next question, which is about training and adoption for the workforce and for the emergency responders themselves. Do you have any strategies you could share about how you help drive adoption? Because sometimes people are used to their old ways of doing something, and a new
Yeah,
whether
that
it's a
that at
medical
one
device
point
or
in
a truck.
time,
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, that was a real challenge. 2018, 2019. I think in Indiana specifically, it was in 2019 that the state mandated that everybody had to no longer use pen and paper, old analog for charting to submit.
Hmm.
You had to move over to digital. And yeah, there was obviously a generation of people who were still in the business, but approaching retirement age or already at retirement age, who that was a real challenge. To get somebody who doesn't even use a home computer very often, and then say, "Here's a tablet or a iPad or a tough book or something," and have them. And of course, inevitably there'd be some glitch and they'd get frustrated, and so that was an ongoing challenge. Now I will say, compared to maybe some industries, EMS skews a little younger. I have about 150 people who work for me, and we do have about every, the age range is there. But if it was a pie chart, the biggest slice of the pie is going to be people in their 20s. So oftentimes that age groups doesn't hesitate to adopt. In fact, they oftentimes are excited about a new technology. And then, as they get, and then the older ages, it becomes more intimidating, and they become some concerned about that. But before we do, before we adopt any technology, so specifically, we use a software called TraumaSoft that we use for charting and dispatching and billing and a lot of stuff. Well, and the tough books that we use, we test drive them in management, and we test drive them from the aspect of, okay, let's pretend we have our least tech savvy employee here, who's going to have to use this. How intuitive, how user friendly is this device's interface? And if it's we've turned some things away, not necessarily just because or not because they were bad devices. Oftentimes they were really good devices. I'm thinking of a ventilator right now that we had, and but I remember messing with it and just saying, there's going to be a number of people here who are not going to get this thing figured out. I mean, it works wonderful once you get it, if you know how to use it. So it's important for us to have, real user friendliness because we have a wide range of people, of educational backgrounds, of demographics that work for us, and we need them to be able to perform the job as the same as everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything, of course, is mobile in your world, right? So the ruggedness and the durability of things and crisis situations, right?
Yeah, we have that joke about, where they brag about things are military grade, and we're like, well, when will they make them EMS grade? Because that's a whole other grade. That's
Yeah,
we
yeah.
Yeah, the ruggedness is super important to us. I mean, the thing's going to get wet. We walk outside when it's raining. It's going to get dropped. I mean, it's just it. You can't move 25,000 people in and out of facilities and residences while carrying stuff and not expect anything to not get dropped at some point.
Mhm.
So yeah, the mobility is super important for us. We do not want to have to wait. We don't want to have to do a call and then in order to process it, have to go back to station. We want to be able to move on to the next call and process it mobily. And then yeah, the ruggedness is essential.
Yeah.
I can say before we had these Panasonic Tough Books, we were using iPads and we were going through you're probably going to think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. We were going through an iPad a week, so we were probably replacing 40 iPads a year, and they would break all the time.
Mm.
Or even if they didn't break, you then would have the issue they'd have some update, and you'd have different versions of iPads because they weren't all. You wouldn't, you'd buy them as time went on, and it was very frustrating. So we that's when we made that switch over to Panasonic, and we've certainly had some things break, but no, I mean I may replace one a year versus I was doing it every week with iPads.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's good to hear. Thank you for your business. No, it's good to validate all of that out in the out in the world. So that's very interesting. How about like maybe pivoting to GPS and connectivity? I know very important for you. How are you seeing or are you seeing changes in? I mean, GPS I mean, it's revolutionized so many industries, right? How do you see the GPS and the connectivity trends, new technologies helping you and your team respond to calls more efficiently?
Oh goodness! I mean, real live GPS, the instantaneous tracking. Because, like I said, we have, as I speak right now, we have ambulances all over the state of Indiana. We do travel outside the state, even some. I mean, not regularly, but we'll go to other places in the Midwest. Every once in a while, we'll go to Chicago fairly regularly from Indianapolis. Um, uh, yeah, having the GPS and having that to know exactly where the crew is, how far out. I mean, and sometimes for emergent responses, you've got maybe you have that obviously scary critical patient, and not every place, especially in here in central Indiana, we have some very rural areas that we cover. And imagine it's 2 a.m. and it's obviously pitch black and it's pouring down rain, and we're going to some place out in the country. And the windshield wipers are going as fast as they can. They've got their lights and emergency lights and sirens on, and they know they're supposed to be looking for County Road 400 South, but it's covered up by some brush, and and they drive right by it, and they miss it, and they need to make that turn to get down there to that patient. Well, having that real live GPS, we'll be watching them go on the call, and we see them miss it, and you can quickly get in touch with the crew saying, hey,
Mm,
you guys missed that turn, and they're like, and they say, oh yeah, it's hard to see out here, and they can turn around and make it back. So that obviously can literally make a life-saving difference for people to have that instantaneous GPS of where we know exactly where the crews are and where the ambulances are in relationships to the patients, because we can mark where they're supposed to be going and track on the way there. And that's for the emergency side. And the non-emergency side, we'll get facilities who are calling and saying, hey, about how far away are you guys, and we can look that up in real time. We just have at any given point in time, we know exactly where all of our ambulances are at GPS wise. I know one of the new technological features coming. It's not in place yet, but it's being discussed. Way, especially to implement it with the software that we use between Samsara for our GPS and TraumaSoft for our crews and our dispatching, um, is having these geo fenced areas. So, now how it works, a crew arrives at a hospital, they pick up the radio, they radio to our dispatch center, hey, we're arriving. And that's assuming they remember to. They do most of the time, but there's human error. Sometimes they get to the hospital and they got distracted because some other ambulances are leaving and coming in and out, and then they forgot to pick up the radio and even let them know that they were there. Now, we may still see it on GPS, but with these geo fences, it's going to be able to auto register timestamp. So if a crew pulls up to a hospital, we can have a geo fence around that hospital that as soon as the truck goes inside that fence that we set up, it will automatically timestamp them as arriving that facility. So you might be able to eliminate, radio traffic, which again, we're a mid-sized service, so we can kind of deal with it. But you've got these services that are running hundreds of ambulances that, we it would be really convenient for them to eliminate excess radio traffic.
Yeah, yeah. I'm interested in your view on emerging technologies, or not even emerging, but recent technologies are already kind of being put out there. Different applications like AI, wearable devices. I know you do telehealth. Well, telehealth has a role to play for sure in all of this. Are there specific trends or applications or examples that you could share of some of these technologies, or even if it's just kind of looking towards the future where you think you may go?
Yeah, the telehealth is the first one that is. I mean, I know there are some that are already implementing that. So, they may have um, monitors inside the actual ambulance with cameras that they can communicate directly with maybe some specialists. So, somebody who's having a stroke, and they can have the neurologist actually evaluate them and assess them on screen inside the back of the ambulance. Because, again, if you're inside Indianapolis, you may be only 5 minutes away from a stroke center. If you're in rural central Indiana, some other areas we cover, you may be an hour and 15 minutes in good weather from a stroke location. So I know there are already some services and some systems that are uh, utilizing telehealth inside of the ambulance for a variety of conditions, so that they can be seen by the specialist even before they get there physically.
Hmm.
So that's one that's already being done. It's not universal by any means, but it certainly is out there. The wearables, yeah, there's been a big push for by some that have EMS begin wearing body cameras similar to police officers. It's probably a somewhat controversial or tricky subject because there's obviously protected health information,
Mhm.
and obviously EMS workers deal with some very sensitive situations and sensitive conditions. And we want a big part of our job is gaining trust with our patients and patients' families. And, you know, we want them to open up to us. We want them to explain exactly how they've been feeling, how long they've been feeling it, and things like that. And if we put a camera on us and now they know they're on camera when they're talking to us, that it has the chance to alter their responses or to maybe reduce how trusting they're going to be of us. So, but obviously there's the safety issues. There's no you can Google search a number of news articles, unfortunately, of EMS providers being attacked or assaulted by patients, whether that be because they were drug induced or mental health episodes or stuff like that. So there's the obvious pros, to help protect the staff in any litigation, that could potentially come up as a result of one of those situations. So that's what EMS Expo is next week here in Indianapolis. I expect there to be some vendors selling that, and I expect that to be probably some courses or some communications or talks, amongst people over that very subject. So,
Yeah.
and then AI. Uh, this is where my technology savvy is probably just not enough. I'm sure there are implementations of AI that have already in place, or certainly in the process of taking place in this industry. Can't say that my company that I'm aware of is using. Well, I say that. Actually, our dash cameras, it's got to be a form of AI that it does driver recognition. So we have our dash cameras not only are forward facing, but they are internal facing in the cab
Mhm.
as well. So it does facial recognition. So when we pull up our GPS map and see all of our ambulances, it also says who's driving each ambulance, and it's not because we assign it. It
Hmm.
does facial recognition. It also gives live warnings to crew members. Maybe they're following, if you're driving down the highway at 65 miles an hour, you may think you've got enough space in front of you between you and the next vehicle. But this thing is obviously doing tons of calculations much faster than we ever could as humans. And so it may tell you to increase your following distance or things like that. So I suppose that is a version of artificial intelligence. Of course, naturally, you think you go to like Chat GPT or something. I'm like, well, we're not really using any of that, but I'm
Yeah.
sure there are other applications that it is being used. I'm not even aware of.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it's being rolled into things like mapping and GPS, right? As predictive analysis, and that's interesting. That's fascinating. The From a video perspective, not body cam video, but from a fleet management perspective, with 360 video around cars, is this something that you guys are looking at or have been rolling out? Because I know it seems like every car that you get in today now has some way to monitor what's going on around it in case of an.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing that right now. Or we have a full time maintenance shop, and they are installing. They integrate with that same dash camera. It's a company
Mm.
called Samsara. I'm sure there's other companies similar to that. I don't get any kickbacks from them, but I will say they've been very great to work with, and we're very happy with their product. And yes, so
Yeah,
they've recently rolled out to where. Uh, 360 cameras on all sides, and some of it is that's gonna provide additional information if we deal with scenes, especially scenes that may involve the police, things that take we have a visual recording of things that happened all around our ambulance. Auto accidents. We drive to the moon and back several times a year with our ambulances, so we spend a lot of time on the road, and unfortunately, you just have that much time on the road with that many vehicles. They're bound to be in some accidents. Some are your fault, some are not your fault. But having this video evidence um, will be tremendous. We've already used it many times as far as for the forward-facing dash, but now, we not every one of our accidents is it always a frontal-facing thing. One of our ambulances a couple weeks ago was rear-ended actually. So we only have the interior cab, but we don't have any video of the vehicle actually hitting our ambulance. But in the coming weeks, that will change, and we will have the full 360
yeah,
picture. So yeah, very excited about that.
yeah. Oh, thanks for your descriptions and your examples. Like they definitely help our customers understand how technology is being applied in EMS. And as you outlined, there are just so many different applications of it, from the fleet management, from the patient data and experience, and from the medical devices and other devices that are on board the trucks. There's just a lot that you have to deal with. So I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate the fact that you're able to open up and explain how you're using technology at Star Ambulance. And David, I really want to thank you for joining TechConnect today.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe. Stay connected with us so we can stay connected with you. I'm David Sholkovitz, and this has been TechConnect.